Hey everybody, it's your pal Drew Dracy, and 30-year comic book industry veteran for Marvel, DC, IDW, CrossGen, Dark Horse, everybody. And lifetime comic book fan. Lifetime since I was about, actually no, since I was about 6 or 7. So I don't know what happened for the first 5 years or so. They're unaccounted for. I was probably working on my Goo Goos and my Gagas at the time. So, Omega the Unknown, we're going into one of my favorite format that seems to get the most likes is, why did blank fail? In this case, why did Omega the Unknown fail? So I was big into Marvel at the time. I was about a year or so into, this era. And I was big on issue 1s a lot of times, or issue 50s or issue 100s, and it wasn't necessarily because I was thinking in terms of collecting and resale. I was thinking more in terms of like, oh, a landmark issue, I'll check it out. And a lot of times those landmark issues were like a conclusion of a story that took place 6 months or a year earlier. Well, Omega the Unknown, I have a high tolerance for indulgences of the Bronze Age, and whoa, I don't know. I'm trying to like this, and I know there's fans out there, and it was a friggin' Marvel Masterworks hardcover that had all these issues in, all 10 issues, plus the 2 issues of Defenders that wrapped up the storyline, and I just don't get it. Well, I think partially it was to keep the copyright going. Sometimes you have to do that. Although, I don't know why they didn't do another trade paperback. It wouldn't be thick enough for an epic, but 20 years ago or so, around in the mid 2000s, they did a trade paperback collecting the first 10 issues. And I remember I couldn't get into it. I was trying to, and it was kind of like, when it's a trade paperback, it's usually a binge, and I just could not make myself finish it. I barely got 3 issues in, and so I skipped this. Considering I liked new Marvel number 1s, this just, I don't know, there was something. I thumbed through it and I found it very disinteresting. And Steve Gerber, who was hot on the heels of success with Howard the Duck, which was such a wild gamble that Stan Lee took attention. And when Steve Gerber, when he and his writing partner Mary Screenes decided to do Omega the Unknown, they didn't have the title Omega the Unknown. That was something Stan Lee came up with. We'll call him Omega the Unknown. And I sound like Hoagie Carmichael or the other guy with the big nose. Cha-cha. I ignored this because, for one thing, the color scheme is very generic. It's Superman, it's so many other characters. Even though the design is by John Romita and it's very clever, I think it could have used a little more coloring to it, and or just a little more variety. So I skipped this issue, and I really didn't. I thumbed through it, and see here the red and the blue. It's all you see here is red. So it's conceived and written by Steve Gerber and Mary Screenes, illustrated by Jim Mooney, who would do the entire run, all 10 issues. So it starts off with sort of like one of those Bronze Age. Where they explain what's going on inside Omega's head while he's fighting, and it's on the planet of his birth, and he gets attacked. There's a scream, and he's connected to this 12-year-old guy named James Michael something. I can't remember his last name, but father. I don't want to leave the mountains. I don't want to go to school. He was homeschooled, which is fine, but the problem was, he wasn't given any friends to hang out with. I mean, I've known homeschoolers that are perfectly fine. It's like, as long as you get out with your friends and stuff like that and other people, that's homeschooling's actually very good. So finally, these parents decide you need to experience other lifestyles. Because why? The other children I have met bored me. I can't imagine any way of life better than so. He talks kind of like Sheldon Cooper as far as very advanced for his age. So, and then the parents actually they crash off the road. And the mother has wires and gadgets coming from her head, so she is a robot. I really like that a lot, that melting image. So what happens is young James Michael guy is he gets some kind of head trip. He's getting so much crowded ideas. It's even more traumatic than it would be normally. Because I think the Omega connection, this is me guessing, because the Omega connection with him reacted even worse than what a normal, I don't know how to explain it. Sorry. But here's the thing. Omega says nothing. He doesn't talk for issues and issues and issues. So you get the tell, don't show. So we find James Michael coming out of bed, and he's very, like I said, he's very straight-laced. Let me give you an example here. He goes, you've got quite a vocabulary for a lad your age. Where do you go to school? I didn't. My parents tutored me at home. And where's home? I don't have one anymore. Mother and father are dead. I see. When did they die? This morning, wasn't it? In the car crash. How do you feel about that? They were good to me, but I don't have anything to fear except their voices. Voices? You hear voices? And the voices are Omega. Although you kind of have to make that reach yourself. It's not... Steve Gerber was never necessarily a direct writer. Sometimes he did, and sometimes he's a little too clever to where it would go over your head. So this guy's trying to figure out what the problem with this kid is. And there's Omega, and Steve Gerber gives you the sell of how this book is coming along. And what I like about it is I think every issue should have something like this. Marble value stamp. This is the second year they did those. This time they made them in the form of puzzles. And I used to cut those things out. And I never got them all. So, really nice Jim Mooney stuff is really solid. And this is a very simple issue, and it calls for a lot of talking heads scenes, which is kind of... It's a little stifling because you got two characters. You got Omega the Unknown, who doesn't say a word, and you have this kid who doesn't talk like... he talks analytical. So if you're the comic reader, you have no one to identify with. And this goes on for months and months and months, and it's a bi-monthly book. So I think a lot of that is what killed the momentum. There was a long reveal of certain things, and I think being it was a bi-monthly book, that it was too long a wait, because bi-monthly books, if you missed one of them, then you had a 4-month wait. And I'll get to that later. So this android comes along. And I'm not even getting into the whys and wherefores, because it's not 100% clear anyway. So, but all of a sudden, James Michael manages to fry that robot. I wish to help you. You seem pleased. I've seen you before in my dreams. Who? And then he departs. And the kid's palms are on fire. And he thinks, were you trying to harm yourself? The doctor asks. No. Then how is it, boy, that your wounds on both hands take the form of the Greek letter Omega? Incredible Hulk. They want to try and get more readers to come in. And it's always good to kind of like pump up a second issue and promote it. This was a Rich Buckler cover, I think. Yeah, Buckler Milgram. And you can sort of tell Buckler, he's got that real sense of mass on the characters. Now you're thinking, oh boy, the Hulk. I saw this in the stands. I thumbed through it. Nope. I passed. Now, like I said, Jim Mooney, I really like, and I liked him on a lot on Spectacular Spider-Man, as well as on Ghost Rider, as well on as Ms. Marvel. But I think for something this very heavy, trippy kind of storyline, you would need somebody like a Jim Starlin or a John Byrne or somebody like that could create more mood lighting. This is ambient light, and it just doesn't give you the feeling of dread. I mean, you can manipulate shadows any way you want to, even in a regular room. So that's a bit off-putting because, like here, this is nighttime, which is fine. And that's an example of really good storytelling. It's Electro taking the robot. And you have these two gals who take in James Michael as a favor to, she was the nurse, and the doctor said, well, why don't you take him in with your roommate? So they see a cockroach. Is Ruth aware of the damaging effects of the aerosol sprays on ozone layer? Probably. She's into the whole ecology bit, but I don't think that's the right phase of the moon to point it out. And why are there bars on the windows? You're the jungle philosopher. You explained about the animals, Amber. The facts are, punk, a lot of rip-offs going around here, even though there's not much worth stealing in Hell's Kitchen. So I love that first panel there. And he decides to break up some robbery. And he chokes there, continues choking. Somehow this guy got over here, but that's just me being a dick and pointing that out. This old guy called Gramps helps out Omega, but the one thug shoots Omega in the arm, and James Michael feels it too. So, it seems to be going somewhere. You have to excuse the poor printing on this. So, anyway, this guy shows Omega, some he helps him, with Band-Aid, and there's still no conversation. Omega doesn't really speak. Let's see. Okay, there is a homeless guy on the street, and it turns out it's Bruce Banner. You can tell by those purple groovy pants he always wears. And it's not a very impressive Hulk. It's just a very odd. I don't know what it is. It's almost too polite, is what it is. Like here, the Hulk throws Omega way back there, but it's all colored the same. So when I saw this panel, I'm like, what's going on? I think Jameson was all wrong for this. And it's like I said, no disrespect to him, because I have a lot of his books that I love. Okay, beautiful cover. Ooh, wow. Gil Kane just sent it, kicking ass. Here's Electro, the Marvel villain mainstay. So this pretty much encapsulates what happened in the previous issue. And the script is fairly good. I mean, it flows fairly well. I like Gerber, and I guess by also accounts Mary Skriniz's voice, the way they talk. They don't say the same old thing like the proverbial this or like a hot knife through butter or all those cliches from the 70s. However, something like this where you're dealing with some real psychological madness that's going on with this 12-year-old boy who only speaks like an adult, and this really could have used a lot more drama. It's just sort of perfunctory. Oop. These are what do you call dryer dryer sheets, and the kind that make your clothes smell nice, and you put them in these old combos and it kills the smell. It takes a little time. Okay. Now that first panel that I love. So you got Electro being a dick, doing what he can, and this classroom, and James Michael's experiencing all this crap going on. This young is just a bunch of punks in the slums, and this girl's Diane. She's a tomboy. She kind of takes him under her wing. Oh man! Oh, go back. Boy, I wanted that shirt so bad. That was from Gil Kane, Frank Giacoya panels of Marvel Team Up 13. Like a super Adaptoid. I'm sure you can make your custom shirts now online, but get out of here. So there's a bully. I do like these long vertical panels at the beginning. Really nice storytelling there. Goes down to there and there. And here we go. So there's a bully. He goes, I'm meeting someone at the gate. Another would be inconvenient. Besides, what possible motive would he have for motive? He needs a motive. Your nose is too straight. That's his motive. Look, we'll stick by you, but geez, what do you figure he'll pull, John? Probably the tollgate routine. Really, this isn't necessary to hold it right there, chicken. It'll cost you 2 bits a quarter to get out of the gate. Are you serious? See this fist? I'm serious enough to ram it past your teeth unless you fork over for the toll. And the price just went up to 50 cents. And he gets punched. Did you see that? Did you see that? He just didn't understand. He said, I'm astonished that a person hit me without any provocation. So, he's very sheltered. But again, like usually in a comic book, especially back then, you needed someone to identify with, someone to cheer for. This guy seemed like somebody I don't give a shit about. That was the way, And then Omega, he's mute most of the book. He does speak very late in the series, but I couldn't drum up any interest. And even rereading it as a very old man, it's just not, I don't know. There's a lot of things that just sort of happen. And there's sort of like a very typical Steve Gerber kind of filled the page with all kinds of existential reasons for things to happen. So, El Gato. See, what would help is if he was closer to us and maybe all in shadow, just to give that sense of ominousness. But ominousness? Like I said, I just think it was a bad mix. I mean, Jim Mooney's working his ass off, though, to be honest. Anybody who works from a Steve Gerber script, I salute them. El Gato. Now this time Pablo Marcos is inking it, even though they misspelled his name. It's not great, but it's better than the heavy inks that Mooney was putting on himself. So he catches a woman who tries to jump off a bridge and rescues her, does a little of his magic mojo. Oh, excuse me, let me go back a second. Would you please indulge me a second? Because there's a lot to take in. There's a lot that I forget because there's a lot of dangling plot threads that don't get resolved, and that usually was something. I mean, that was before it became cool, before Chris Claremont perfected that. I'm working on it. Okay, I guess it's issue 1. Pardon me. See, now this happens here, but there's no follow-up to it. There's no follow-up to, like, he's thinking the kid was trying to harm himself, and it's barely mentioned. So it's very disjointed. And my understanding of Steve Gerber is the way he worked, he never planned out the next issue. Which was great, but I think in this series it was a great detriment. I'm talking about like the Headman story from the Defenders and Howard the Duck. He would put a title at the last page, and he would just come up with something, which I applauded. It's just it really wasn't working with this concept. So finally, Omega says why, and it's issue 4. Now bear in mind, we started with issue March, so it's okay. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So it's asking a lot to, we're only at issue 4 and it's bi-monthly. So it's really, I kept putting me off because my cousin would get the occasional issue and I would try to read it, but I was lose interested in it because I just didn't care about the characters. It was mostly plot, and I guess that's the best way to put it. And I actually read all of this, and it was okay, but I don't know. If I seem flummoxed, there's a good reason. So there's this kid who befriended James Michael, but he's stuck with these bullies. And got friggin' brass knuckles, for God's sake. You got Vega doing good stuff because he's supposed to be, and then El Gato does not like. All these kitties attack him, which seems kind of weird because he took a lot of beatings, you know, from other, like from super beings. But little old man Gramps, he manages to hose all those cats off. Cats hate water. So, the guy, this is interesting, El Gato guy, he has the woman who tried to jump off the bridge in his thrall now. I am going to El Gato entirely of my own free will. It is as it should be. So Omega does nothing. He goes, well, of all the, he got her hypnotized. Why don't you go get him, Sam? Which was the old man's nickname for Omega. Hey, I saw you on TV, mister. You're the guy who short-circuited Electro, didn't you? That's nothing. I saw him beat the Hulk right here on the street. Yeah, but you blew it this time, huh, fancy pants? It's like he doesn't connect it together. Like he doesn't know nuance. Like he took this woman at her word and she's hypnotized and he doesn't follow. And that's kind of interesting. But again, it's like you have a person, you have two people that are connected, but you can't get connected to either one, and he doesn't react. Neither of them have normal reactions then in situations. Really nice Gil Kane cover. Power Be My Destiny. I hate those kind of titles. Well, anyway, the friend of James Michael shows up. He got beat up really bad, and then all his trauma with James Michael kicks back in again. And you know, stuff happens. But again, it's being explained. It would be nice to hear the main character actually say something. I mean, it's tricky to do a mute character. That's, you know, like Jericho from New Teen Titans. I had a hard time really getting into him for that reason, and also I didn't like his costume. So what's great though is J. Jonah Jameson makes an appearance, and this woman's photographer. She took some great pictures of the Hulk versus Omega, and J. Jonah Jameson's trying to be cheap. And he goes, so where's my check? I need to call you about that. You billed at twice your usual rate. That's the amount we shook hands on when I promised you exclusive use of those photos. But I couldn't possibly. Pardon me, Mr. Jameson. I failed to see how any of those factors diminished the monetary value of those particular set of photographs. One of Amber's photo appeared on your front page. It would indicate to be a certain editorial pride in the newsworthy quality of the picture, huh? This is my favorite scene. It's like, this would be substantiated further by your expressed desire for exclusive rights to publications of photo. In short, at the time of your agreement with Amber, none of those other considerations was paramount, and hindsight was clouded your recollection of your feelings of the moment. Okay. So he says, where's my check? So he writes out the check. And Peter Parker's laughing in the foreground there. And he's like, excuse me, you wouldn't happen to be available for consultation, would you, kid? I've been trying to hawk pics here for years. Sorry, we have an appointment. So a little appearance like Spidey. You know, and this is okay, but it's just that he's not talking, neither of them are talking like a person. And you need someone like this guy here, the old guy. He's good at his capacity, but it's just not enough. So James Michael and Diane visit their friend who got beat up. Nasty iron from El Gato, and they don't show it on. It's a comics code thing. You can't show somebody being branded, which is fine. Kids shouldn't be seeing that anyway. So, again, this is a problem I've had with some books where it just tells you everything. It's just like, okay, the Cape Man's fist lashes out at the demon hag, yowls in pain, and disintegrates in a plasmic blast, and her corporal counterpart crumbles to the floor. So, faith and look and the accuracy of data accumulated distress. We're trying to be shut up. I want to hear what Omega has to say. So it's just painful. And I know there's people who love Omega out there, and I'm just saying what I'm saying. So here all of a sudden we see Nick the bully gets the shit out of him, and it's never mentioned again in the rest of this series. So it's just nuts. Okay. There is a Ramita and Dave Cockrum cover. Although that looks different. That looks like up here it looks very different because that's not clean like Cockrum. Almost looks like it's almost like Neil Adams stepped in that day and said, let me fix that face a little bit. Well, Mike Esposito's inking it, and it's okay. It's just okay. It is less muddy than when he inks himself, but again, these are very static images. Very good. I mean, I would still use these poses, but you know, it's, as I said, the ambient light is a real put off. So they're discovering other people's hardships. But James Michaels is still just taking it in a very analytical fashion. This other kid who's complaining about pinball, but it's not the guy who was in. It's not the same long-haired guy who was beating up, who put that other kid in the hospital, and it's never been addressed. Oop, oop. And here James Michael does something again. There's a little French frying. Okay, get this. Okay, we're a year into this book, and we know nothing more than we did before. So, all of a sudden, issue 7 is written by Scott Elderman, who wrote Captain Marvel, and he wrote some other books. He wrote quite a few books for the black and white magazine format that Marvel had. So, all of a sudden, you know, Gerber and Skrines are not to be found on their own book that they created, and supposedly they were the only ones who knew what the story was about. So, and it's a bi-monthly book. I keep saying that, but it's very important. I mean, if you think waiting for a month between stories is a long time, I mean, we have multi-crossovers now to where every week something is happening. But having to wait 2 months for something, yeah, it's just nuts. So, yeah, Blockbuster. Named after the song by Sweet. I just made that up. Okay. It's kind of polite, you know. It's not so much that he kicks him, he just kind of la 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 la, like tiptoes on him. So this is kind of the stuff where Jim Mooney, he doesn't quite serve the story as much. He's not as jazzy. He's better at the nuance of the other books I mentioned. So anyway, this guy Blockbuster, he stole a lot of money, and he's like, I gotta make sure my son doesn't have to rob banks. I can't let him grow up like me. And he's like, you mean you're letting me go? What do you think you're doing? Get out of here. They ought to revoke your superhero license. And that's because the battle is over, and Omega just thinks, wait, hang on a second. Outwardly nothing, but inwardly the Cape Man notes similarities of James Michael Starling and his son, and the body does what it can to survive. It's just kind of so I know I keep going but you know, this comic makes me Anyway, I had covered this issue on my other channel, which was Random Comics for my spinner rack. Gorgeous. Nitro is cool. And here we go, Roger Stern again. So we're going like half. By the time Gerber and Skrines gets back, almost a half a year will have passed. So it's pretty aimless. Lee Elias, who did a lot of stuff for Roy Thomas's books. It's a fun story. You know, I dig Nitro, blows up. And the one who ultimately killed Captain Marvel, by causing nerve gas to leak from one of his explosions. So there's like a moment between Omega and James Michael. And there's the Foolkiller, the second Foolkiller. Richard Rory returns from Man-Thing, canceled Man-Thing title. So, it's okay. It's just... I mean, if you're doing a bi-monthly book and you have two characters that you cannot understand their motives and it's still a mystery, how... I'm surprised it lasted 10 issues. This is the kind of flack. Because Lee Elias is one of those guys who was great for newspaper strip type stories, much like Frank Robbins, and but when it came to doing like a comic book format with superheroes, it didn't quite work. It was just an odd thing. But to Marvel's credit, they gave these older guys work. So Foolkiller, E pluribus unum. You have 24 hours to live, use them to repent, or be forever damned to the pits of hell, where goeth all fools. Today is the last day of the rest of your life. Use it wisely, or die a fool, and your friends with you. So it is a character who took up the mantle of Foolkiller after the original one died. Richard Rory had experience with him. So, am I putting you to sleep yet? Because it's hard for me to relate all this stuff. I'm falling asleep. Now here we go. Another offbeat saga from Steve Gerber, writer of Howard the Duck. So now they're like, hey, this book's about to get tanked. Come on. So all of a sudden, Steve Gerber and Mary Skrenas comes back. Or they come back. And I should just leave these in here. See, this is just kind of... it's very... Or something, and I always say this because I don't think all comics should be like dark with Frank Miller's shadows and the Venetian blinds and all that shit. But what I'm saying is, if you're doing a psychological thriller, and that's more what this comic is than a superhero comic, you need to have the dynamicism of a Jim Starlin or a John Byrne or just many other artists that draw moody stuff. Like if you have someone about to pound on somebody, give them a silhouette. Here comes a Foolkiller. Printing, but I am not buying a damn Marvel Masterworks for it. Like I said, this was a chore to read. And, maybe I'm being narrow-minded and such, but I've read a lot of stuff. A lot of crazy... I love Gerber's stuff. I just think the concept was very flawed. So that sort of happens. We're being... one thing, that was the other thing about Master Kung Fu. I kind of liked the book, but there was a lot of that too, where they tell you what Shang-Chi was saying, was thinking as he fights. I mean, I didn't mind it when he would say, like, I stop with a knife block, and then I do a such and such. After a while, you get tired of being told what's going on. So, this guy blows away Blockbuster. Okay, issue 9. Here comes the last issue. Another Kind of Hero. From Steve Gerber, author of Howard the Duck. So they're trying, but it's way too late. Now, we've gone through 2 years of this stuff, and we're no closer to answering the question, and they have to finish it and issue it Defenders, and that's just very off-putting, and it's just kind of, how did it last this long is more the question. Not why did it fail, why didn't it fail earlier? So, Howard Bender does the lettering. Nice stuff. So it's a cemetery where the kid got beat up and put in the hospital. And remember, that bully, he showed up in the hospital all bloody, that never, ever, ever mentioned again. So that was a big mistake. So, I mean, you get a lot of disjointed... Okay, for some reason, this guy, he's always been the guy who takes care of Omega Man. I was going to say like the Charles Heston movie, but the guy is always, he kind of got through to Omega about how he's been in poverty most of his life, so he takes the old guy to Las Vegas, and they get all this, they win all the slots. So here comes this such and such, not very, you know, not very exciting stuff. What? They're my parents. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And with Omega's help, the old man's winning tons of money, tons of money. And of course, the old man yells 55 grand, which is really smart because then you have somebody show up and takes both out. I didn't know this until I read in Wikipedia, because I needed something to go off of, that this was Ruby Thursday, who was part of the headmen, one of the headmen who was responsible for trying to take over the world, but they didn't color it right because she had, like, you know, even if she had body makeup, you know, her tendrils would probably be red. So things just sort of happen, and at the end, Omega gets shot. The story of Omega the Unknown will be concluded in a future issue of the event of the Defenders. So that's the end. Great book. Like, here we go. Wait a second. You'll all just have to wait for those upcoming issues of Defenders to learn how right or wrong you are. So until then, the very best wishes to all the readers who kept OTU alive this long. Well, and in the two Defenders issues, I actually read them way back when I was collecting everything. And they're as disappointing as the rest of the series. Steve Grant was assigned by editor Al Milgrom to wrap up the storyline, and Steve Grant admitted later that he really wasn't into the character, but, you know, being a pro, he did it, and he tried to do it in the voice of Steve Gerber, and he found out that it was completely unsatisfying. And just like this series is, and, you know, I know I'm being down on somebody's favorite character, but I don't know. It kept pushing me away. That's the thing that's frustrating. I mean, I'll give a book, you know, several chances, but this book just kept wanting me to not read it. So you got 2 years, and we know nothing. We have more questions than answers, and ones that could have been answered earlier. So, what happened to Omega the Unknown? It was way too much indulgence, and it was a mess, and that's about all I can think of. If you think otherwise, you could correct me. That's fine. I've got no problem. I'm not an expert. I just feel I have strong feelings of this. Why it failed specifically. I mean, you could offer comments of how it could have been improved, or how it could have been, you know, maybe a monthly schedule, if that were possible, would probably help move the mystery along than waiting a whole year, because that's asking the readers a lot, and especially 2 years, and you're not done with the basic origin story, quote unquote. That's over the top. But anyway, that's all. I'll stop bleating, and I wish you all a very good day, and take care, everybody, and I'll be back soon.